Leave the briefcase where it is. Step behind the line. Keep your hands where I can see them. Thaddeus Warren looked down at the painted curb beneath his shoes. He was already behind the passenger pickup line. Above him, the electronic sign displayed passenger pickup active in steady green letters. Two white travelers stood closer to the roadway, with rolling suitcases beside them. Neither officer had spoken to them. Officer Grant Halpern stopped directly in front of Thaddeus, blocking his path back toward the terminal doors. His partner, Evan Coulter, remained half a step behind. "Which line are you referring to?" Thaddeus asked. "The one I just told you to get behind. I am standing inside the designated pickup area." Grant glanced at the battered leather briefcase near Thaddeus's feet. "You working out here?" "I am waiting for my wife." "That isn't what I asked." Thaddeus studied him through wire-rimmed glasses. He had spent the previous 2 weeks in Washington reviewing a complex federal civil rights dispute. His shoulders ached from the flight. His wife was delayed in traffic. He wanted hot tea, a quiet house, and nothing more complicated than the drive home. Grant stepped closer. "This curb is restricted. Go back inside, or show me identification." The sign above them remained green. Thaddeus looked toward the roadway. No vehicles were stopped in front of him. No airport employee was directing passengers away. No warning tone sounded from the curb management system. "Has this section been closed?" "You questioning whether I know my own terminal?" "I am asking what restriction applies." Grant's expression changed not dramatically, but enough for Evan to notice. Evan glanced at the other waiting passengers. "He's not blocking anything," he said quietly. Grant did not look at him. "Sir, I gave you 2 lawful options. Move or identify yourself. Am I suspected of an offense?" "You are refusing a terminal safety instruction." "What safety condition?" Grant's jaw tightened. "Identification. Now." Thaddeus kept both hands visible. "My wallet is inside the left breast pocket of my coat. I will use my right hand to retrieve it slowly." He waited. Grant gave no answer. Thaddeus raised his right hand toward the inside of his coat. "Don't reach." Thaddeus stopped immediately, his hand open near his chest. Grant moved one hand toward his restraints. "I instructed you to produce identification, and then instructed me not to retrieve it. Turn around." "Am I being detained?" "Turn around and face the pillar." "For what suspected conduct?" Grant seized the front of Thaddeus's coat. The movement came without warning. Thaddeus's shoulder struck the concrete pillar. His glasses shifted across the bridge of his nose. "Officer, release my coat." "Stop pulling away." "I am not moving." "Evan, take his other arm." Evan hesitated. He had seen no crime. No airport complaint had come through dispatch. The curb remained open. Grant had selected the only older black man standing alone and converted every question into another reason to escalate. Still, Evan stepped forward. He closed one hand around Thaddeus's left wrist. Thaddeus kept his fingers open. "My right shoulder has an old injury," he said. "Do not force it behind my back." Grant twisted harder. The pain arrived sharp and immediate. Thaddeus's knees bent, but he did not strike, shove, or pull away. The briefcase tipped beneath Grant's boot. Its brass lock snapped open, spilling folders across the salt-streaked pavement. Several pages slid beneath a luggage cart. "Stop resisting," Grant shouted. The volume drew attention from the terminal doors. A woman named Keisha Nolan stood beside a concrete barrier, waiting for her sister's flight. She had watched Grant ignore the other passengers. She had heard Thaddeus announce every movement. Now she raised her phone. "He isn't fighting you," she called. Grant glanced toward her. "Stay back. Police matter." Keisha kept recording. She said the time aloud. Then the pillar number. Grant swept Thaddeus's legs from beneath him. The pavement struck his cheek first. His glasses flew toward the curb. One lens cracked against the concrete. Grant drove a knee into the center of his back, while Evan held his left arm. Thaddeus tasted blood. "I am complying," he said, forcing the words through the pressure against his ribs. "Your camera should show that." Grant reached toward his chest. His body camera was still dark. High inside the Airport Security Operations Center, Lena Park received an automated alert. A person had been placed face down beneath the curbside camera at Pillar 4 Bravo. The posture had crossed the system's medical risk threshold. The responding officer's body camera had activated only after physical contact began. Lena opened the live feed. She saw an older black man pinned to the pavement. She saw one officer tightening restraints while the man's hands remained open. She saw the green pickup sign above them. She did not know his name. She did not know he was a federal judge. She opened the incident preservation console and locked the camera footage. Curb status, vehicle flow data, dispatch history, and body camera activation time to an external compliance server. At the curb, Grant hauled Thaddeus upright and pushed him toward the patrol vehicle. Evan gathered the scattered folders. A gold federal seal flashed from the cover of one document before he closed the case. He said nothing. Grant shoved Thaddeus into the rear seat and slammed the door. As the cruiser pulled away, Grant believed the official story would begin with the report he was about to write. On Lena's monitor, a new line appeared beneath the live feed. External preservation complete. Grant Halpern began writing the arrest report before the patrol vehicle reached Aviation District West. He dictated into the cruiser microphone. Subject ignored repeated terminal safety instructions, made a sudden movement toward a concealed area, and physically resisted lawful detention. In the passenger seat, Evan Coulter stared through the windshield. Thaddeus Warren sat behind the security partition with his wrists pulled high against the cuffs. Blood had dried along his cheek. His right shoulder burned whenever the vehicle turned. There was no terminal closure, Evan said. Grant stopped the recording. What? The pickup lane was open. He refused an order. He asked what the order was based on. Grant looked at him. When we get inside, your supplemental report says he pulled away and tried to turn on me. Evan did not answer. Grant restarted the recording. At the precinct, Desk Sergeant Paul Dwyer looked up as the officers entered. Grant pushed Thaddeus toward the booking counter. Obstruction, resisting detention, attempted assault, and failure to comply with airport security instructions. Paul looked at Thaddeus's face, then at the angle of his arms. Were either of you injured? Grant shook his head. He never got the chance. Was there a dispatch call? Officer initiated contact. What was the suspected offense? Grant placed the briefcase on the counter. He was standing in a restricted curb zone and refused to identify himself. Paul opened the preliminary charge screen. Before he entered the first count, a notification appeared across the monitor. Independent Evidence Preservation Notice. Paul read it twice. The notice identified a critical use of force event beneath Pillar 4 Bravo. Airport video, audio, curb status, traffic data, and body camera activation records had been secured outside police control. The notice instructed the precinct not to alter reports, timestamps, or device logs. Paul removed his hands from the keyboard. Stop the booking, Grant frowned. For what? Medical review and evidence verification. This is a routine arrest. Paul looked at Thaddeus's wrists. Routine arrests do not arrive with external preservation notices before the paperwork. He ordered a paramedic and separated Grant from Evan. Grant objected until Paul directed another officer to escort him into an interview room. Evan remained near the desk. Paul placed a blank supplemental form in front of him. Did you see the subject strike Officer Halpern? No. Did he attempt to flee? No. Did dispatch report suspicious activity? No. Did you hear Officer Halpern tell him to retrieve identification? Yes. Did Halpern then order him not to reach? Evan looked toward the closed interview room door. Yes. Paul turned the form around. Halpern says the subject pulled away and attempted to turn on him. Sign if that is what you observed. Evan picked up the pen. His hand remained above the signature line. He remembered Thaddeus's open fingers. The green pickup sign, Grant's knee pressing down after the cuffs were already secured. Evan set the pen down. I can't sign that. What did you observe? Grant chose him without a call. He said the curb was restricted, but it wasn't. Mr. Warren stopped moving when he was told. I held his left arm, but I didn't see resistance. Paul wrote the statement himself and asked Evan to verify each sentence. The paramedic arrived minutes later. She documented swelling around both wrists, a facial abrasion, reduced movement in the right shoulder, and signs of a head impact. Thaddeus asked Paul to photograph the cuffs before removing them. Include the ratchet position, he said, and record who unlocks them. Paul studied him. You understand evidence procedure. I understand how quickly an injury becomes an opinion when no one records it. Paul photographed the cuffs and entered the time. Only then were they removed. Thaddeus lowered his hands slowly. Pain ran from his shoulder to his fingertips. Paul opened the wallet Evan had recovered from the coat. Inside was a federal judiciary credential bearing Thaddeus's photograph. Paul looked up. Judge Warren? Thaddeus met his eyes. You stopped the booking before reading that. Yes. Keep the sequence that way. Paul nodded. The evidence required it. My title did not. The precinct doors opened. Elise Warren entered wearing a dark wool coat, followed by Dana Whitmore from the Federal Civil Rights Office. Elise saw the blood on her husband's face but did not touch the arrest paperwork. Preserve every version, she said. Do not delete the charges. Mark who drafted them, when they were entered, and what evidence existed at that moment. Captain Martin Cavanaugh arrived soon afterward. He offered to release Thaddeus, erase the charges, and investigate Grant internally. Elise declined. You do not correct a false record by making its history disappear. While they spoke, Cavanaugh approved a preliminary public statement describing a rapidly developing airport security encounter involving a non-compliant individual. He had not yet viewed the preserved evidence. Across the airport, Lena Park completed the synchronized file. The first frame showed the green curbside message. Passenger pickup active. The traffic sensors showed an open lane. The audio captured Grant ordering Thaddeus to retrieve identification. Seconds later, it captured him ordering Thaddeus not to move. Dana placed Cavanaugh's public statement beside the verified timeline. By then, the lie was no longer only Grant's. Dana Whitmore did not build the case around Thaddeus Warren's title. She built it around time. The airport camera showed the curbside sign reading, Passenger Pickup Active, before Grant Halpern approached. Traffic sensors confirmed there had been no congestion warning. Dispatch records contained no complaint, no suspicious person call, and no terminal closure. Keisha Nolan's original video captured Thaddeus's open hands. Grant's body camera activated only after he had seized the front of Thaddeus's coat. Evan Coulter's statement supplied the missing sequence. Grant had selected Thaddeus without an assigned call. He had ordered him to retrieve identification, then described the attempt to obey as a threatening movement. Evan had seen no strike, no attempt to flee, and no resistance before Grant forced Thaddeus onto the pavement. Captain Martin Kavanaugh's public statement described a rapidly developing security encounter. The synchronized record showed an officer creating urgency where none existed. Dana obtained a warrant for Grant's department phone. A private shift chat contained a message sent shortly after the arrest. Grant wrote that he had taught a man in an expensive coat to respect curb rules. The message did not establish the violation. The video had already done that. The message established intent. Grant was removed from duty before the end of the evidence review. His badge, firearm, airport credential, and arrest authority were surrendered that afternoon. He was placed on unpaid suspension rather than protected administrative leave because investigators had found probable falsification of an official record. The department later terminated him for unlawful detention, excessive force, and dishonesty. Federal prosecutors charged him with deprivation of rights under color of law, aggravated assault, and falsification of official documents. Evan was charged separately with failure to intervene. He surrendered his badge and admitted that he had understood the encounter lacked a lawful basis before he placed his hand on Thaddeus. His decision to refuse the false supplemental report mattered. It did not erase the moment he chose Grant's approval over what he could see. Martin lost command of Aviation District West after investigators determined that he had approved a public defense of his officers without reviewing the independent evidence. He was stripped of supervisory rank and removed from all public information authority. The department was required to issue a correction through the same channels that had carried his first statement. The correction identified each unsupported claim. No restricted curb, no aggressive movement, no assault on an officer, and no lawful reason for the original detention. At Grant's federal trial, Thaddeus entered the courtroom in a charcoal suit. He did not wear judicial robes. His right arm still moved carefully after months of treatment, but he carried no cane and offered no speech about revenge. Dana asked where he had been standing. He identified the pickup zone. She asked what Grant had ordered. He repeated the commands in their original sequence. She asked whether he had struck either officer. No. Dana returned to her table. The video, sensor history, medical documentation, and officer statements carried the rest. Grant's report was displayed beside the synchronized footage. Each claim appeared with the evidence that disproved it. Restricted zone. The sign showed the curb open. Sudden threatening movement. The audio recorded Grant ordering Thaddeus to retrieve his wallet. Physical resistance. The video showed his hands open beneath Grant's weight. The jury convicted Grant on every federal count. When the verdict was read, the court ordered him remanded directly into federal custody. He did not return home wearing his uniform or wait for sentencing on paid leave. A marshal removed the belt and personal property he had worn into court and escorted him through the secured door behind the defense table. Grant later received 9 years in federal prison. His state law enforcement certification was permanently revoked, and he was barred from future employment involving arrest authority or armed public security. Evan pleaded guilty to failure to intervene. He lost his certification for 5 years, received community supervision, and was prohibited from serving as a field training officer or supervisor if he ever returned to law enforcement. His cooperation reduced his sentence. It did not convert him into the person who stopped the assault. The case did not end with the 3 men. An audit reviewed 2 years of Grant's curbside stops. Investigators found that Black and Latino travelers had been asked for identification far more often than white travelers under the same traffic conditions. Several body cameras had been activated only after detention began. Unsupported citations were canceled. Fines and administrative fees were returned with interest. Negative police contact flags were removed from airport and municipal databases. Each affected traveler received the original record, the corrected finding, and the name of the office responsible for the correction. One warehouse supervisor recovered money he had paid after being cited for refusing to leave an open pickup zone. A college student had an obstruction notation removed before it could appear in an employment background review. A Black mother received written confirmation that the complaint once dismissed as a communication problem had been substantiated. They did not have to become federal judges before the system reopened their cases. Thaddeus's draft charges were not quietly deleted. They were marked unfounded. The corrected record identified the detention as unlawful and preserved the names of the officers who had created the accusations. Copies were sent to every database that had received the original arrest entry. His medical costs, damaged property, and lost professional time were compensated through a public settlement containing no confidentiality clause. The city also funded an independent legal assistance program for travelers challenging unsupported airport citations. Great Lakes International Airport adopted an independent curbside incident protocol. Any prone restraint automatically locked airport video, audio, traffic data, and dispatch history to an external compliance server. Body cameras activated when an officer began an enforcement contact inside the curbside zone. Officers had to record observable conduct before demanding identification during a non-emergency encounter. Supervisors were required to examine the period before physical contact, not merely the footage after force began. Public statements could not be released until independent data had been reviewed. Integrity reports bypass the local command structure. Employees who refused to sign false statements receive protection from retaliation, while officers who failed to intervene remain subject to separate review. Quarterly audits compared stops by race, stated reason, officer, force used, and final outcome. The airport's liability insurer tied future coverage rates to compliance with those controls. Lena Park received formal protection for preserving the evidence outside police custody. Keisha Nolan's unedited recording became part of the permanent case file, credited as civilian evidence rather than reduced to an anonymous social media clip. Months later, Thaddeus returned to his bench. The lock on his leather briefcase had been repaired. The documents inside had been cleaned, inventoried, and returned through a documented chain of custody. A white scrape remained across one brass corner where the case had struck the salted pavement. The repair shop had offered to polish it away. Thaddeus declined. The scrape belonged to what had happened. The accusations did not. The white mark on the corner of the briefcase remained. The words obstruction and resisting did not. This story is a work of fiction.